The loss of some 300 jobs at the Driver and Vehicle Agency could just be the tip of the iceberg if welfare reform isn't implemented here, says the DUP. Former Finance Minister Sammy Wilson has forecast that 1,600 civil servants employed by the Department of Work and Pensions could be in danger of redundancy. But is he being alarmist? With me now is Mr Wilson's successor as Finance Minister, Simon Hamilton. Good morning. Welcome to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Let's just start with those job losses at the DVA. First of all, did the announcement that we were losing 300 jobs, most of them in Coleraine, come as a surprise to you?
Well, look, I think we all knew for a long time that the jobs were under threat, and a very good campaign was mounted, both from government, trade union side, the local community, local business were involved in that campaign too. And I think we mounted an incredibly good case that some of the work that, whilst we understood that government in Westminster wanted to cut costs, wanted to centralise some services, wanted to move some services online to enhance the experience for customers, that some of those jobs could have been done in Coleraine and elsewhere in Northern Ireland. We have a very good track record of doing work like that, not just in Coleraine on behalf of government in England and over in Britain. We also do it for benefits and for social security as well.
But that's the problem, isn't it? You made what you say is a very good, robust case. You had a petition of 40,000 signatures objecting to the change handed into Downing Street just before Christmas. Didn't make one jot of difference. Nobody listened.
No, well, look, I do think a very good case was made, and the effectiveness and efficiency of workers in Coleraine was incredibly high, not surpassed by any of their counterparts elsewhere in the United Kingdom. And that's why I think that, whilst I suppose it wasn't a surprise that the government were looking at this, it was a surprise that they took the ultimate decision that they did. And I do think that it shows, and I think it's stark that and of interest that this decision hasn't been taken here in Stormont in Northern Ireland, has been taken by the government in Westminster, and does show that whenever you are looking at jobs in the benefit system and social security, that there will be a ruthlessness potentially applied to those if we don't in Northern Ireland do things in welfare reform, which perhaps we don't like but are inevitable nonetheless.
And the situation could get worse because in a speech to accountants on Thursday night you warned the next 4 years will eclipse even the last 4 years of austerity. It's not a very positive message to be sending out, is it?
No, it's not. It's not a sort of message I like to put out there, but I think I would be failing in my job if I didn't stress to people that even though the economy is doing better, and it is doing better, we're getting lots of good evidence about the economy growing, unemployment falling, the housing market starting to move in the right direction as well. Even though the economy is doing much better, it doesn't translate automatically into public spending improving. And we will hear over the next couple of days in the run into the budget, both the Chancellor and the Shadow Chancellor and others stressing that we are only about halfway down the road to austerity, and that Northern Ireland will continue to feel the impact of austerity for at least the next number of 4 years.
And what does that mean? Because the Treasury signalled this 17% drop in expenditure over the next 5 years. What might that mean for Northern Ireland?
Well, we don't have the data that far in advance for Northern Ireland yet, but if you look at the projections sort of from now to 15, 16, where we do have some data, we're looking at the equivalent of around £300 million being taken out of our budget in Northern Ireland, about 2.1%, and that's coming on the back of obviously all the other cuts that we've had to deal with over the last number of years, which are about £700 million per year coming out of budgets in Northern Ireland. Yeah. And it presents us in Northern Ireland with a choice, I think, between going for the sort of crude frontline cuts which might be sort of designed to protect perhaps the centre of government, or we can look at what government does and look at how we can do it much more effectively, much more efficiently, how we can reform and improve public service delivery.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because of course the programme for government makes a commitment to rebalancing the economy. That means fewer public sector jobs, more private sector jobs. So if you look at what's happened in that context, then perhaps it's what we would expect. We would expect to see a reduced dependence on public sector employment.
Well, we have a large public sector in Northern Ireland, and I don't think that it is too large. I've argued for a long time now that the private sector is too small, and we need to grow the private sector, and that's why we're pursuing a reduction in corporation tax in Northern Ireland, so we can boost the private sector.
It's easier said than done, isn't it?
Well, it is certainly a challenge looking at where we're coming from. If you have a situation where about 2/3 of our economy is dependent on the public sector, about 1/3 of our employment is in the public sector, it is hard to rebalance in terms of increasing the private sector. It is a challenge, but what I'm determined to do is that public sector, which has actually provided a bit of a cushion over the last number of years as the private sector has struggled incredibly in Northern Ireland, as it has right across the UK and elsewhere, that that public sector, instead of being seen as a drag, can actually become a bit of a driver for the economy, and can, if it is reformed, if we continue to improve, can actually make a beneficial economic contribution in Northern Ireland.
And as if all of that isn't bad enough, and a lot of people will think it is pretty bad, it's not ideal. Sammy Wilson, your predecessor, highlighted in the last couple of days the risk he says are posed to 1,600 civil service jobs in Northern Ireland if welfare reform isn't implemented. Do you agree with him on that?
Absolutely, I agree with him. I've been saying the same message now for a number of months, that not moving forward on welfare reform, the immaturity, the lack of leadership being shown by parties like Sinn Fein, it's actually threatening.
And the DUP.
Well, no, to be fair, in the DUP, there are aspects of the welfare reform bill that we're not happy with, but we have achieved quite a lot of derogations. We have got a lot of flexibilities. Nelson McCausland has done extremely well in his negotiations with the Department of Work and Pensions to get flexibilities that would actually ensure that the bedroom tax, the much hated bedroom tax, doesn't actually apply to people who are already getting a benefit through housing benefit in Northern Ireland. And there are other flexibilities that we have got as well. But Sinn Fein and others are refusing to move forward. That is not only threatening actually further reductions in our expenditure. We've already lost £15 million this year. Over £8 billion will be lost in the next 5 years in penalties from Treasury if we don't proceed on welfare reform. But most importantly, around 1,500 jobs in Northern Ireland, where people in Northern Ireland are doing social security work on behalf of customers in England and in Wales, could be lost, in fact are probably most likely to be lost, because as we've seen with the DVA jobs this week, why will an English minister taking a decision want to keep jobs in Northern Ireland if we don't even have the same benefit system that they have?
Well, very interesting figures. Just let me check that again. You've already set aside 15 million for the first penalty. It goes up incrementally. It's going to rise to 105 million by 2015. Did you just say $1 billion?
Yeah,
in 5 years?
It starts to rise. What it is this is the savings that the government in Westminster would have expected to get through welfare reform, and it goes up as the programme of welfare reform is rolled out over the next couple of years. So within 5 years, the total figure will have gone up to, it's about an annual figure of around £300 million. Right. And once you add all of that up, that's an additional £1 billion coming out of our budget. So never mind what the Chancellor is going to pass on in sort of the cuts that are going to be seen right across the whole of the UK. So these are self-inflicted wounds by a lack of leadership from Sinn Féin.
And where is the evidence of the political will and political commitment at Stormont on the part of you and the other 107 MLAs up there to sort this out? Because that's real money, and that's going to have a real effect on people on the ground.
It is absolutely going. It's going to have a devastating effect on public services if we were to take that additional amount of money out of public services in Northern Ireland. It's not a lack of willingness on my part. It's not a lack of willingness on the part of the Social Development Minister and other members of my party, and indeed some other parties. And we've been making this very clear to Sinn Féin, to the SDLP, to others, that we absolutely, whether we like the welfare reform bill or not, we have changed some of the worst bits, we've ameliorated some of the worst effects of welfare reform in terms of vulnerable people in Northern Ireland. But we can't afford to take that hit, because the vulnerable people are going to suffer because of the £1 billion reductions that are going to impact upon public service delivery here.
Okay, Simon Hamilton, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Just stay with